Hello, I'm going to talk about equanimity. I'm going to open with a quote from Master Han Shan De Ching. He says, "When we are empty of ego, we too can carry on in calm acceptance of life's varying events. When we seek making prejudicial distinctions, gentle or harsh, beautiful or ugly, good or bad, a peaceful stillness will permeate our minds." So Han Shan is a historical teacher that I like a lot. His name means silly mountain. There's actually another teacher from Chinese Zen history named Han Shan whose name means cold mountain, and that's sort of distracting to get into, but that one is a lot more famous than this one. Silly Mountain. He lived in the 1600s, and he was viewed as kind of a crazy person. He lived in the woods and he traveled around and talked to people sort of randomly about Buddhism. He didn't start his own temple and do the traditional thing of training, right? He went and taught everyone. And he was kind of viewed as a crazy person, as a wild teacher. He was a Zen poet, a Zen lunatic, right? So, anyway, in the quote, he's talking about equanimity. In Buddhism, we talk a lot about awareness and insight and compassion, and these are all great things to cultivate, but I think sometimes we don't talk enough about equanimity. It's a word that I didn't know before I started studying Buddhism. Did you know it? Did anybody know equanimity before they started studying Buddhism? I think most people didn't. And some people like to substitute the word patience instead, and I don't like that. Because I think of patience, when I think of patience, I think of the thing I'm trying to have when I'm stuck in traffic and I really don't know what's happening in front of me. Or the thing I need to have when I ask my kids to clean their room and it's been like an hour and it seems like they haven't done anything. Those are the times I need patience, right? So I don't like using patience instead of equanimity. Equanimity is a calm acceptance of life's varying events. That's what Han Shan described it as, and I think that's a good definition. It's the attitude that helps us accept the way things are with a calm and even mind. It's equanimity that really stops us from totally falling apart when things get hard. Things are hard. Life's a dumpster fire a lot of the times, and it's easy to let it get us down, right? Equanimity involves trying to view things as equal, not being quite so attached to our circumstances or our desires. It involves letting things be as they are. And I'm going to tell a Zen story now. This is the story of Master Hakuin. Hakuin was a teacher in Japan. He lived at the same time, around the same time as Han Shan, but I don't think they knew about each other. But he has a story. It's called, I'm going to call it Han Shan and the Baby. And this is the story, Han Shan and the Baby. Hakuin and the Baby. Jeez. Hakuin lived in a hut next to a village, and people would just come to see him. They would come and ask for, Buddhist teachings or for advice on troubling matters or whatever, the things we ask spiritual teachers to do for us. And he just lived in this hut. When people came and asked for things, they would give him food and other donations, right? That was how he maintained himself. And in the village that was next to his hut, this young girl got pregnant. Young girl, I think probably 14 or 15, right? Too young to be pregnant, one would think. And she had a relationship with a poor fisherman boy, and for whatever reason, even though her family was poor too, she really didn't want her parents to know who the father was. So she lied to them. She said it was that teacher Hakuin that got me pregnant. So 9 months go by, and she has the baby, and her parents, again, poor family, they decide they don't want to raise this child. They take it and they deliver it to Hakuin's hut, and they say, this is your responsibility. You broke your vows and impregnated our daughter, and now you're going to take care of this baby and raise it. And also, we're going to tell everyone that you're an asshole, right? And Hakuin says, is that so? And he just takes the baby. And the parents the grandparents of the baby leave. And Hakuin makes sure he gives the baby the best possible care. He borrows milk from his neighbors, and he sews some diapers, and he just takes really good care of this baby. And nobody comes to see him anymore. His reputation is fucked. He's ruined by this story that's being told. Okay, so over a year goes by of Hakuin raising this child, and the girl either feels guilty or she decides she wants to be with the fisherman boy or whatever. For whatever reason, she comes clean. She tells her parents, "I'm sorry I lied to you. Hakuin is not the father. It's this poor fisherman boy." And the parents, they feel really bad for wrecking Hanshan's reputation. So they run to Hanshan's hut and they say, "We're sorry. We're going to take that baby back. You're not the father. We realize that now. We're sorry." So Hakuin just says, "Is that so?" And he lets them take the baby he's been raising. So the way this story is told is usually that Hanshan, god damn it, Hakuin is fine. He didn't experience sadness because he had so much equanimity. I don't think that way. I like to believe that he was really sad, but because he had equanimity, he handled it, right? He had to be sad. He had over a year to bond with this baby, right? So why does he say, "Is that so?" I think it's because if he said anything else, if he said, "That's not my baby," or if he got mad at them or whatever, like, he's not gonna look less guilty, right? So he just says, "Is that so?" And he just accepts this baby. I think most of us can't imagine just accepting such a challenging thing, suddenly having a kid and having your reputation ruined, and then suddenly having that kid taken away. Like, that's big, right? And that's what makes it relatable, because we can try to put ourselves in that situation and just think, wow, how did he even begin to handle that? And if we want to go deeper with equanimity, we can. Sometimes a mind with equanimity is called a mind without distinctions, a mind that doesn't chase this or that. And I can explain that in just a few words, but it's not easy. I'm not gonna at some point stub my toe and just look at it calmly and say, "Oh, I am experiencing pain," right? I have an opinion about this or that. I don't want to stub my toe. I don't want to feel pain, right? And I don't think I'll ever be in a state where I'm gonna stub my toe and say, "Oh, I'm experiencing pain," you know? So that level of equanimity, man, I don't know. And equanimity also is kind of the antidote to greed. So our greed tells us we constantly want things and what we have is never enough. And equanimity is kind of that sense of enough, right? It's that sense that, well, I'm okay, right? I'm okay. In the text Faith in Mind by the third Zen patriarch, which is the text certainly Hakuin and Hanshan were both familiar with, and I'm going to tell you about it. The writer Singsan starts talking about equanimity. He thought equanimity was so important that he started this foundational Zen text with it. I'm going to read you another quote. I hope that's okay. Singsan starts with the verse, "The supreme way is not difficult if only you do not pick and choose. Neither cling nor push away, and you will clearly understand." The supreme way is enlightenment, right? And what stops us from realizing our enlightened nature is picking and choosing. So Hakuin in that story was okay. He was able to have a baby or not have it. He didn't pick and choose. He did not get all caught up in his preference. I want this, I don't want that, right? I call this the mind that says I, me, mine all the time. I, me, mine, right? What matters in the world is me. All that matters is me, right? And also I think there's some expectation in that. Also, kind of sometimes we expect life to go our way. There's a quote that's attributed to Shakespeare, and Shakespeare didn't say this, so I call it a Shakespeare quote, but it's expectation is the root of all heartache, right? It's our vision of what things are supposed to be like really messes us up sometimes. And the last two lines in the Sing-Song quote, neither cling nor push away and you will clearly understand. Just tells us we can see things more clearly if we stop trying to control everything all the time. Peace is right here if we can just let the world unfold as it is. There is contentment in stillness. This really applies to meditation practice too, and that's another level why I think it's important. When I'm sitting and my crazy mind is thinking it doesn't want to do this, or thinking of all the other things I could be doing, watching Netflix or whatever, that's the mind of picking and choosing, and my mind can be a real jerk sometimes. So that is equanimity. Thank you for taking the time to listen.